to install is our undercarriage, and to achieve that we use the remaining 4 extra long screws that were in the hardware bag, and these screw in from the underside. So basically the screws go in here and then they screw into the 4 PM nuts that we have on our, so if I just bring the frames in, see they screw into these pieces here, and again some Loctite to hold those on because it's a metal to metal screw. Okay, and there we have our landing gear installed. The next thing we're going to install is this servo holder, and we use 2 of our remaining 6 screws. These are the second longest screws, or the 037 screws. Now where this piece goes, if I just bring my frames back in again, grab that piece, this piece goes up here on there like that, and we put our screws through here to bolt it into place. Again, the Loctite to hold those in place. Okay, and there we have that installed. Just lift, as you can see. There we go, our screws here with Loctite on to hold that in place. Okay, for this next step we're installing 2 servos. This is very straightforward. We just use 4 of the, in fact they're the remaining 4 screws from our hardware bag 2 that we opened, and these are used to screw the servos into the front servo mounts. So if I just show you the front servo mounts on the frames, come out a little bit. Okay, so here we have our front servo mounts, and the servos effectively screw onto here and here, and once the servos are screwed in we can do up these screws here. Okay, and there we have our servos installed. As you can see here, they face backwards. The output shafts of the servos are towards the top as well, and we just have a single screw in the top there and a screw here in the bottom, and there in the bottom there, Loctited of course. And once you've got these servos installed, you can then go and tighten up these screws in here with the washers on them, and this screw here. So take them out, Loctite them, put them back in again, tighten them up. For our next build step we're going to be using parts bag 3, which contains all the parts that we need to do this next part of the build. And this is the drive system, so it's the main gear, the belt drive, we've got our main shaft here and the auto rotation hub, and we're also going to install the motor as a part of this step as well, and put the pinion on, set the gear mesh, all that kind of stuff. So I'll unpack these parts from the bags and we can get on to the first piece, which is putting together the main gear and auto rotation hub. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is assemble the tail rotor pulley. Basically the way this goes together is this piece here goes into that piece there like so. Then we turn it over and push it through, and then there is a threaded hole and an unthreaded hole. So that one there is the threaded hole, this is the unthreaded hole, and basically you want to turn this piece so that the unthreaded hole lines up with one of these. You can see here there's an indent in between the holes, so you want that hole there to line up with an indent there on the gear. So as you can see, I've now got that aligned with the indent, and then if you look you can see all the holes are lined up for the screws to go through. So that's the reason for doing it. And our screws are these ones here, and these go through from this side. So as this is now, the screws go in this way into that and are Loctited in place. Okay, and now we have all our screws in place, and that's that particular part of the build completed. Okay, the next job is to put the main shaft sleeve into the auto hub, and this is the auto hub here. And when you look at it, you'll notice that there is a short side to it and a longer side, and the main shaft sleeve inserts from the longer side into the hub like that. Now before we put this in, we actually want to make sure that our auto hub is lubricated properly, so get some Teflon lubricant and put it inside here on the needle rollers, so that it's all nicely lubricated and will last a lot longer because of it. Okay, the next job is putting our lubricated and assembled auto hub into the main gear. If you look at the main gear, it's got an indent in it, and our auto hub literally sits in the gear like so and pushes down into that indent with the holes lined up, the holes in the auto hub lined up with the holes in the gear. And there we go, that's now pushed down in, and my holes are lined up, and I can screw that into place. Okay, and here I have my screws, and these go in from the opposite side, so they screw in from this side into the auto hub that side. So in through there is the way to go. So I'll go ahead and do that and you can have a look. Okay, and there we have our screws in place, and you can see them from the other side. So the next thing for us to do is to assemble our tail drive pulley and our main gear together. And here we have our tail drive pulley, and the way this goes together is that basically this piece sits on top of that piece like so. And that's our assembly completed. Now we do need to make sure that our hole aligns with the hole in the shaft here, so you can see that there is a hole in the main shaft sleeve, and we need to make sure that the hole in this lines up with that, like so. Okay, the next thing for us to do is to install the belt, and there's some detailed instructions in the manual for doing this, but basically we just need to insert the belt, unravel the belt, and then insert it through the back of the boom clamp and put it around our tail rotor pulley, and then we're pretty much done with installing the belt. Okay, so there you can see our belt going through the boom clamp, through the pinch rollers, and around the main gear, which I've just loosely placed in the frames there, so you can see the belt is going around that. Now we've got that in there, we can install our main shaft and line up the holes in the main shaft and the pulley and the main shaft sleeve. Sorry, the main shaft pulley and main shaft sleeve. So this is the pulley and the sleeve that we lined up when we put it together. The shaft's got a hole in it as well, so it'll insert down through the top of the frames, and then once all those holes line up, we can put a bolt through to secure it in place. Okay, so here we have our main shaft, and what I want to show you is that the main shaft has a hole at the top, and this is where the rotor head goes, and it has a hole a little bit from the bottom of the shaft, and this is the bit that goes down into our main gear, and the bolt goes through that hole and through the drive pulley and through the shaft sleeve. Before we insert the shaft into the machine, we also need to make sure that we install this, which is effectively the mast locking collar, which locks the main mast in place so it can't move vertically. So the main shaft goes into our top bearing first, and then this is immediately below the top bearing to the shaft before it goes down into the tail rotor pulley. So I'll just loosely install that so you can see what I mean. Okay, so there you see the shaft installed, and the mast locking collar here is just loose. I haven't tightened that up yet, but you can see that the mast comes down, and then we've aligned all of the holes here in the sleeve and the main mast and in our pulley, so that we can put a bolt through here to secure all that in place. And that in fact is the next thing we need to do. Now there is a unthreaded part one side and a threaded part the other, and the bolt needs to insert from the unthreaded hole side. So this hole here is unthreaded, so the bolt comes in from this side and has Loctite on it to tighten it on the other side. And the bolt I'm talking about is, he says dropping it, is this fella here, and that's going to go through there with Loctite on it and tighten up. Okay, and there we see the bolt here, goes through the main mast and into the threaded part the other side here, where the Loctite will hold it in place. We push down on the main mast. You see I've got my finger on the top here. We push down on the main mast, and then we push the locking collar up as far as it will go, and then we use the grub screws, which you can't actually see at the moment, but if I turn it around you see there's one grub screw and there's the other. We use the grub screws to tighten this up and hold it in place. What we should see is that there is a flat here on the shaft, which one of those grub screws will go onto, and the other grub screw will just go onto this other flat here. So we need to make sure that we line these flats up with these two grub screws before we do them up. But the procedure is to push down on the top of the mast, push the locking collar up as far as it will go by putting the Allen driver in like this, and we push it up like that, and then tighten it onto a flat, and then tighten up the other grub screw onto the other flat, making sure that we've Loctited both grub screws. And then that's the shaft locked in place and the mast locking collar correctly set. Okay, and there we have it done. And what you should find is that if you get hold of the mast and pull it up and down, there should be no clicking or play in it at all. It should be completely solid, which mine is. And that's the mast installed into the frames. So the next job is installing the motor. This is the 4400 kV XL Furion motor, which you use the smaller of the two pinions with, and this is the grub screw to hold the pinion onto the motor. So we install the pinion onto the motor and we make sure, oh that's tight. Okay, so there's our pinion fitted, and you can see that the pinion is flush with the end of the shaft. We can now install the motor into the model, and in order to do that we use these screws here and these washers. And that's the motor fitted. I've got a tiny bit of backlash in the gear, not very much. You can see it mounted in the frames there. You can see how it's mounted down through there. Okay,